Hi, today we'll be talking about my favorite subject, leadership. I will walk you through the difference between leaders and leadership and explain why we need much more of the latter, leadership, than we do need of the former, leaders, if we want to do something good to our world. My dear friend Francesco says that we as leadership professionals have failed and should seriously rethink ourselves. As an evidence for that, he quotes, several examples of leadership across the globe that have caused issues and troubles. I see his point, but I have a different view. And when Francesco lays out his disappointment, he is actually talking about leaders that have failed. Ministers, presidents of countries, as well as in business like CEOs, top managers, etc. And I believe that's precisely the point. What matters when it comes to make the world a better place for all of us, it's not leaders, it's leadership. And no, it's not the same thing. It's not about, just turning a concrete noun into abstract. There's more to it. There's much more to it. And let me explain what I mean. If we take a quick look at the way leadership has been investigated in literature, very roughly, of course, it's much more sophisticated than that. But we can see a number of approaches of theories that have looked at leaders as, special ones, individuals with a personality, unique characteristics that separate them from the rest. And we also have a chunk of theories that have a different approach. They don't look very much as leaders, but more as leadership as a social role. Let's take the first group of theories. They are sometimes known as great men theories. And when people, when you're looking at these theories, basically people buy into the notion that leaders somehow are more knowledgeable, intellectually more capable, more talented than the rest of us. And by virtue of all this, they have the right to tell others what to do, how, and when. Well, I contend that this view is limited, and even more importantly, it's not taking us anywhere. We keep expecting, bold acts and key decisions by these so-called leaders, and by doing so, we dwell in unrealistic hopes. As if a country like mine, Italy, for instance, could be turned around by the act of a bunch of people or even a single individual, and not by 60 million citizens that finally decide to pick up the ball down there and do something about it. These leaders, on their part, they enjoy such vision. I sometimes call it a deal between so-called leaders and followers that serves, from the standpoint of the leaders, it serves the purpose of maintaining differences of status and power. And from the standpoint of the followers, it allows them to let go of responsibility for tough decisions and difficult choices to their leaders. In this way, all people, leaders and followers, are responsible to perpetuate this difference and maintain the deal. This is authority and has nothing to do with leadership. Rather than looking at traits such as confidence, dominance, assertiveness, and of course intelligence, we take a different perspective on leadership that is more based on what people do and less on who they are. In this respect, a leader's role is to set the context for others to be successful, for others to exercise leadership, you see? A few years ago, I had the privilege to meet Gianfranco Noseda, one of the greatest orchestra conductors in the world. And he told me something that a colleague of his, Valery Gergiev, in Noseda's opinion, the absolute greatest conductor alive, had told him some time before. And Gergiev told Noseda, don't be the star, but look for the stars around you. How marvelous that is. How it exemplifies the role of leadership in growing leadership as opposed to leaders creating followers. So let's look at fairly recent definition of leadership that are more consistent with what we're talking about here. There's a fairly recent one that calls leadership, a process of motivating people to work together collaboratively to accomplish great things. Another interesting one by Marshall Gans, leadership creates the conditions that enable others to achieve a shared purpose in the face of uncertainty. In both this definition, that's what matters, leadership is not the job of very few chosen ones. In fact, it could be embraced by a large number of people, and it should. There's another great reason to change our perspective of leadership, and that is that we are losing the enormous potential that could be brought by women in leadership. Traditional view of leadership, not accidentally we spoke about the great men theories, associate leadership to a more of a male style. Recently, we've done a research in a multinational organization using a personality inventory that was submitted to 170 leaders, successful leaders, in senior position within that particular organization, and assessed as possessing the potential to grow further and to occupy very senior positions within few years. So all successful people, men and women. Looking at the pattern of responses across gender, we found some very interesting results. Women displayed, compared to men, women displayed significantly higher levels of energy and confrontation and lower level of emotionality. So women higher at confrontation and energy and lower at emotionality. To be successful, many women in today's business world need to behave according to the male establishment, and they do that to the point of accentuating the characteristics of successful male leaders. Gender diversity is, of course, a form of diversity, and is such an opportunity for learning, renewal, different approaches and perspectives. Understanding different views and finding a solution is what leadership is about, not just following somebody to the promised land. So we're moving from leaders to leadership, from male dominance to more of a female style. And now I give you another one, from I to we. And I illustrate that by means of a story. On the 21st of December 2012, a global initiative was launched under the umbrella of Rebirth, by the Italian contemporary artist Michelangelo Pistoletto. He launched a number of activities around the world, all aimed at rebirth, so making the world a better place. The particular one I participated to was a human chain. A human chain, people holding hands for over 50 kilometers, connecting the center of Torino, my town, in Italy, in the northwest of Italy, with a village called Susa, near the French border. Susa has been very well known lately for the riots that have burst there against the construction of the TAV, as we call it, the high-speed rail, aimed at connecting Milan and Torino with Lyon and Paris in France across the Alps. So this human chain was to send a message of peace, one of togetherness. I get to the square in the center of Turin, and I asked two people who were holding hands to let me in, and join the chain. And one of them asks me, are you by yourself? And I go like, no, I'm with 50,000 people. And the other one stares at me and says, wow, well said, greatly said. And I must admit that was a good answer, when it came like that. And the point I'm making here is that only we can make anything meaningful in this world. No I can. Speaking in I terms, besides marking the differences of power and limiting possibilities, is also a sign of an unhappy life. A study conducted in 2002 showed that the use of first pronoun singular, I, associates with depression, whereas the use of we is almost absent in depressed individuals. In 2012, I had the opportunity to follow a speech live by Dean Williams, lecturer in public policy at Harvard Kennedy School, and that was truly an eye-opener for me. That's when I truly understood the paradigm shift I'm sharing here, and that's when I realized that what we need is more leadership and not more leaders. Williams uses a penetrating image from the Animal Planet to make his point. The silverback gorilla. The silverback is a sign of power. When a male gorilla overthrows the previous head of the pack, his back turns gray within 6 months. It's kind of a sign, you know, I'm in charge now. Follow me. And the silverback gorilla has, you know, a role within the pack. First of all, he provides direction. And he wakes up in the morning, you know, sniffs the air, leads the pack down the hill to the valley where the berries are. And of course, if indeed they find the berries, you know, his credibility increases. That's what other ones expect of his authority. The silverback gorilla also maintains order, is the dominant figure, right? He sets norms and rules for others to stick to. And he protects the group, right? And the territory where the gorillas live and their resources to eat, drink, and nest. And is also a symbol, is the authority figure. Doesn't all this remind you of something? Isn't that what we expect of most of our leaders? But as we said, leadership is much different from this. It's not being the silverback gorilla. Let me share another very elegant model that has a lot to do with the point we're making. It was devised by Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy from Harvard Graduate School of Education. And they have conceived 3 systems through which adults make sense of the world. Basically, you know, they approach external stimuli, make sense of complexity and understand the world. The first one is called socialized mind. In a socialized mind, you know, we behave according to what we think others expect of us, what we think others want to see and hear. Our goal is to meet other people's expectations, socialized mind. Second system, self-authoring mind. We form our personal ideology. We can step back from the expectations of others, that others put on ourselves. We are no longer written upon by society. In this respect, we author ourselves. We do have our agenda and our direction. That's called self-authoring mind. Never before midlife, some people, and it's important to notice, some people transition to a third system as they realize that the self-authoring mind, powerful as it is, leaves something or some people out. In a self-transforming mind, people can hold more than one system at a time, at once, which is why Keegan speaks of increasing mental complexity. This is when the either-or perspective commences to be replaced by an and, much more inclusive type of perspective. While advancing my agenda and design, I make also space for the agendas of others. I seek actively information that may lead me to enhance, refine, or even alter my original design. The third system recognizes the self-transforming mind, recognizing that lasting change can only come from collective effort, like in the human chain. Robert Keegan links this model and the third system in particular, the self-transforming mind, to the fact that we are living much longer than our ancestors. This has not been an incremental growth across mankind history, but more a phenomenon that has characterized the last century and a half. Consider that about 150 years ago, life expectancy was what we would today call midlife. So Keegan wonders, why is this happening? You know, why not in the sense of why thanks to medical programs and the likes, for instance, but why, what's the purpose? What are we doing with that? We're given about a generation or more to live beyond our age of fertility and reproduction. Why? What's the purpose? What are we doing with it? Only collectively can we find an answer to this brilliant question. And leadership must help us do so. Leadership creates a world where others want to belong, one in which individuals can affirm their identity and contribute to a purpose that is larger than themselves, and probably that purpose is the one why we live so much longer. By spreading leadership instead of expecting leaders, we will raise ourselves to excellence, embrace new challenges, and create the kind of world in which we choose to live. Thank you very much.